The kitchen was warm with the scent of freshly made pancakes, but Wine's heart felt anything but. As she stirred the batter absent-mindedly, her mind drifted back to last night, the moment that refused to leave her thoughts. She had been explaining and equating to Jungkook, her cold, unreadable husband, when something shifted. His usually distant eyes had lingered on hers a second too long, and before she knew it, their lips had brushed. It wasn't intentional, it wasn't planned, but the warmth of that fleeting touch had set her heart racing. Yet this morning, Chuguk acted as if nothing had happened. No hesitation, no stolen glances, just the same cold difference. Lost in thought, Wine barely noticed the pancake turning darker than it should have. Are you planning to serve me burnt food? His deep, emotionless voice made her flinch. Turning quickly, she saw him leaning against the counter. Arms crossed, his dark eyes fixed on the pan. Oh no, she scrambled to take it off the heat, her heart hammering. Placing his plate in front of him, she watched as he sat down without a word. He didn't even glance at her, just picked up his fork and began eating. One sat across from him, her eyes softening. He barely spoke to her, never acknowledged the little things she did, and yet she couldn't stop herself from caring. Did you even sleep properly? You were studying late. Chungkook didn't look up. Does it matter? Her fingers clenched slightly around her fork. Of course it does. She tried again. The formulas I explained yesterday, do you remember them? This time he finally lifted his gaze, dark eyes locking onto hers. Quadratic formula, differentiation, logarithm properties. His voice was flat, almost careless, but the way he said it made her lips twitch into a smile. You actually remembered. Jungkook scoffed, stabbing his fork into the pancake. Did you think I was an idiot? I never said that. She giggled softly, leaning forward to ruffle his hair. I'm just proud of you, that's all. Before she could finish, his hand shot up, grabbing her wrist. His grip was firm, cold fingers wrapping around her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. Don't. His voice was low, almost sedating. His dark eyes bored into hers, something unreadable flickering within them. I don't need your approval. His voice was sharp, his fingers lingering for a second before he let go. She bit her lip, rubbing her wrist where his grip had been. Even now, he kept his walls up, pushing her away, pretending like her care meant nothing. But Wine knew better. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his fingers slightly trembled when he thought no one was looking. He could pretend all he wanted. She sat, finishing her meal in silence. When they were done, one grabbed her bag, glancing at him. We should go. We will be late for class. Chungok stood, slinging his bag over his shoulder without a word as he walked past her. His shoulder brushed against hers, lingering just a second too long. It wasn't much, not an apology, not an acknowledgement, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. The ride to college was silent, just like every morning. White stole a glance at Jungkook, who sat beside her, eyes fixed outside the window, lost in his own world. His fingers drummed slightly against his thigh, his usual cold aura surrounding him like an impenetrable wall. 6 months, that's how long they had been married. 6 months of secrecy, of walking side by side yet feeling miles apart. Jungkook had made it clear from the beginning no one was to know about their marriage. To the world, they were nothing more than classmates. As soon as they stepped onto campus, he slipped away without a word. No goodbye, no acknowledgement, nothing. One watched him walk ahead, his broad shoulders disappearing into the hallway. She let out a slow breath, pushing back the sting in her chest before heading to her own class. The lecture hall was filled with the usual murmurs of students settling into their seats. Wine took her usual spot near the middle, pulling out her notebook. The professor stepped in, clapping his hands to get everyone's attention. All right, class, settle down. We have a new student joining us today. A girl stepped forward, her long wavy hair cascading over her shoulders as she smiled brightly at everyone. Emma, introduce yourself. Emma's gaze swept across the room before her eyes landed on someone. Jungkook. Her expression lit up instantly and she let out an excited gasp. Oh my god, Jungkook. Whispers erupted around the room. Wine, who had been flipping through her notes, frowned slightly at the girl's sudden excitement. Emma turned to the professor with a beaming smile. Professor, can I sit beside Jungkook? The professor barely nodded before she was already moving. All right, go ahead. Emma practically ran toward Jungkook, sliding into the seat beside him, as if she had been waiting for this moment forever. She leaned close, her hand lightly brushing his arm as she grinned up at him. I can't believe you are here. It's been so long. Jungkook, who usually wore an unreadable expression, actually smiled, a small, barely there smile, but it was enough. Enough to make Wine's fingers tighten around her pen. He never smiled at her like that. Slowly, she turned her head, meeting his gaze. He was already looking at her. Their eyes locked for a fleeting second, his expression unreadable, hers laced with something she couldn't make quite name. But before she could even think of what to say, Emma giggled, resting her chin on her palm as she stared at Jungkook like he was the only person in the room. You have no idea how much I missed you. I thought I would never see you again. Jungkook let out a low chuckle, one Wine had never heard before. Yeah, it's been a while. A dark, unsettling feeling crept into Wine's chest. A while. So they knew each other, and not just casually. Emma acted like she was his long lost lover. Emma leaned in even closer, her voice soft yet laced with excitement. You look even better now. I swear you have not changed at all. Jungkook smirked slightly, shaking his head. You haven't changed either. Wine's stomach twisted. Why did it feel like she wasn't even in the room anymore? Like Jungkook had completely forgotten she existed? Her chest tightened, but she kept her expression blank. It wasn't like she had the right to question anything. Not here, not in front of everyone, because to the world, Jungkook wasn't her husband. He was just a stranger sitting across the room, smiling at another girl. After class, Jungkook and Emma walked out together, their voices blending with the murmurs of other students. Emma laughed at something he said, lightly touching his arm, as if she had every right to. Wine clenched her jaw, forcing herself to look away. Wine, a gentle nudge on her arm, made her turn. Her friend Manda gave her a knowing look. Wine let out a dry chuckle, shaking her head. Oh, nothing. Let's go to the canteen. I'm starving. Manda eyed her suspiciously but nodded. Let's go. The canteen was buzzing with students, but Wine barely noticed. Her eyes immediately landed on Jungkook and Emma, sitting together at a nearby table. Emma was practically glued to his side, flipping her hair as she giggled at something he said. Wine ignored the pang in her chest and grabbed a banana milk from the counter. Without hesitation, she walked toward the table. Jungkook looked up as she placed the drink in front of him. Here, this is for you. She smiled, hoping to find at least a flicker of warmth in his eyes. Jungkook's gaze flickered to the drink before meeting hers. His expression remained unreadable, his voice as cool as ever. Oh, thanks. His lips curved into the smallest of smiles, one that was barely there but still enough to make her heart ache. Just as she was about to turn and walk back, a voice interrupted. Wait a second. Wine paused, slowly turning her head. Emma's perfectly shaped brows were raised as she scanned Wine from head to toe, amusement dancing in her eyes. Who are you? Silence fell between them. Wine's fingers twitched at her sides. She turned to Jungkook, hoping he would say something, anything, but he just sat there watching the interaction with an expression she couldn't read. Emma scoffed at Wine's silence. Oh, I get it now. A smear curled on her lips. You are one of his little admirers, are not you? A few students turned to look, catching on the conversation. Whispers filled the space around them. Wine blinked before letting out a chuckle, cold, sharp, and nothing like the usual her. Admirer. She crossed her arms, tilting her head. That's an interesting way to put it. Emma flipped her hair back, her smirk widening. I mean, look at you, bringing him drinks, smiling at him like a love-sick puppy. God, you're desperate. A few students snickered. Wine felt Amanda stiffen beside her, ready to step in. But Wine didn't need saving. She took a step closer to Emma, her voice dropping to a deadly calm tone. Desperate, that's funny, coming from someone who's been clinging to him all day like a leech. Emma's spirit faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. Excuse me? Wine leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice just enough for Emma to hear. You think I'm just some admirer? She tilted her head, her next words slicing through the air like a knife. I'm his wife. Emma's face dropped, the blood draining from it. The students who had been listening in let out a collective gasp. Even Manda's mouth hung open slightly. Jungkook's fingers tightened around the banana milk, his jaw clenching. Emma blinked, letting out a dry laugh. What kind of joke is that? White smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. Not a joke. We have been married for 6 months, but you wouldn't know that, would you? She shot a pointed glance at Jungkook before turning back to Emma. Because unlike some people, I don't need to throw myself at him for attention. Emma opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. Her face turned red in embarrassment. The entire canteen burst with murmurs and gasps, but Wine didn't care. She had held back for too long. Finally, she turned to Jungkook, her expression unreadable. Enjoy your drink, husband. With that, she spun on her heel and walked away, leaving the entire canteen in stunned silence. At home, Jungkook didn't ask. Not a single word about what happened at the canteen, not a single glance of anger. In fact, he was happy, proud, even. He never thought he would see Wine fight for herself like that, seeing her stand up to Emma. Watching her claim him in front of everyone, it did something to him, something dangerous, but he kept his silence. Because no matter how much he wanted her, no matter how many times he had to hold himself back from reaching out, he had decided he wouldn't touch her. Not yet. She was a brilliant student, someone with dreams, a future. If he so much as slipped and let his feelings consume him, he knew she would get distracted because of him, so he waited. He would propose to her properly after their graduation. Until then, he would endure the ache of wanting her, of seeing her so close yet so far. Ryan, however, wasn't as patient. As they sat together in their dimly lit bedroom, the silence stretched between them like an invisible wall. She fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve, sneaking glances at him as he scrolled through his phone. She couldn't take it anymore. Are you mad at me? Jungkook's fingers stilled for a moment before he looked up at her. His dark eyes locked onto hers. Unreadable as always. Why would I be? Because I exposed our relationship. I thought you would be angry. Jungkook leaned back, exhaling softly. No, why? I'm not angry. There was something in his voice, something softer than usual, but before she could process it, his phone rang. The name flashing on the screen made her stomach churn. Emma, of course. She clenched her fists as he simply stared at the phone, not picking up. The irritation bubbling inside her finally burst. For God's sake, Jungkook, I just want to talk to you, but she's always trying to come between us. Jungkook looked up surprised. Before he could say anything, Wine turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, her heart pounding in frustration. She dropped onto the couch in the living room, her head tilting back as she stared at the ceiling. Her breaths were uneven, her chest tightening with emotions she couldn't name. The couch suddenly dipped beside her. A shiver ran down her spine as a deep voice broke the silence. Are you angry with me? Her body stiffened. She had not heard him follow her. She slowly turned her head to see him watching her, his face calm but his dark eyes holding something unreadable. No, I'm not angry. She looked away. I'm just angry at Gamma. I mean, Emma. His lips twitched. He leaned in just slightly, his voice low, teasing. Maybe you were jealous. She whipped her head toward him, ready to deny, but the moment she did, she realized just how close he was. Her back pressed against the couch as his fingers brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch feather like jet burning against her skin. One swallow trying to steady her racing heart. I'm not. Her voice came out weaker than intended. Jungkook tilted his head, eyes darkening as he studied her face. Every little twitch on her lips, every nervous flicker of her lashes. No, his fingers trailed down, barely grazing her jaw before stopping right under her chin. He tilted her face up, forcing her to look into his deep, unreadable gaze. Then why do you look so bothered, baby? The way he said it low, deliberate, sent a shiver down her spine. Her fingers curled into the couch. I just don't like her. Jungkook chuckled, his voice dipping into something more dangerous. You don't like her or you don't like her with me. Her breath caught in her throat. His thumb brushed against her lower lip, lingering just for a second too long before he pulled back, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Don't worry, love. He leaned closer, his lips barely an inch from her ear. You don't have to like her because the only one I see is you. Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs, but just as fast as he closed the distance, he pulled back, standing up as if nothing had happened. Go to sleep, you have a test tomorrow. And with that, he walked back to their bedroom, leaving her sitting there, breathless, dazed, and burning with a feeling she couldn't explain. Morning light poured into the room, but instead of its usual warmth, there was a strange chill in the air. Wine turned toward Jungkook, who was laying on bed, his face Unusually pale, lips slightly parted as he breathed heavily. His forehead was damp with sweat, his body radiating heat. Panic surged through her chest as she placed her hand on his forehead. He has a fever. Jungkook, you are burning up. Jungkook groaned slightly but managed to open his eyes, his gaze hazy. It's nothing, just a little fever. Wine crossed her arms, glaring at him. Nothing, you can barely sit up. Jungkook sighed, rubbing his temples. I will be fine. You have a test today, don't you? Wine pursed her lips, torn between staying and going. I don't care about the test. You are more important. Jungkook's heart did an unfamiliar flip at her words, but he quickly masked it with a small smirk. Are you skipping just to baby me? Wine's cheeks warmed. Shut up. I just want to take care of you. Go, Wine. I don't want you missing your test because of me. Wine bit her lip. How could she leave him like this? I will rest, I promise. Just come home early, okay? She hesitated but finally sighed. Fine, but you better not move too much. Yes, ma'am. He smirked weakly. The day passed in a blur, but something felt off. Without Jungkook, college felt empty. The usual comfort missing. After class, she went to the restroom, washing her hands when suddenly a familiar voice parsed the air. Oh, look who we have here. Wine ignored her, drying her hands, but Emma stepped closer, crossing her arms with a smudged expression. Tell me, Wine, how does it feel being Jungkook's temporary entertainment? Wine clenched her jaw but remained silent. Emma smirked. I was thinking maybe I should give him something better. What do you mean? I'm going to propose to him tomorrow and just watch, he will choose me over you. You are not even his type. You're not his terror, just his mistress. And let's be honest, she scoffed, giving Wine a mocking once over. You were nothing but a charity case for him, were not you? Something in Wine snapped. She stepped forward, her expression unreadable, but her eyes burned with something fierce. Are you done? Emma blinked, slightly taken aback by her calmness. You can throw all the insults you want, but let me make one thing clear. She tilted her head. I don't need your validation, and Jungkook is already mine. Emma's smirk faltered. Wine stepped even closer, whispering, You think you can steal him with your cheap tricks? Try, but don't come crying when you embarrass yourself. With that, Wine turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Emma fuming behind her. But even though she had fought back, a small fear lingered in her heart. Would Jungkook really choose Emma over me? After class, on her way home, Wine stopped at the grocery store buying some food and, most importantly, medicine for Jungkook. When she arrived home, she found him laying on the couch, a blanket draped over him. She placed the medicine on the table and sat down quietly. Jungkook, noticing her silence, phone was wrong. Wine shook her head, forcing a smile. Nothing. Jungkook wasn't convinced. Wine, his voice was firm, demanding the truth. Emma, she told me she will propose to you tomorrow. Wine hesitated and she called me your mistress. Jungkook's jaw tightened and she called me poor. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Jungkook sat up immediately, reaching for her hand. Look at me. Wine sniffled, but she didn't move. Wine, his voice softened, and she finally met his gaze. And then, to her utter shock, he pulled her onto his lap, wrapping his arms around her. His warmth, his presence, everything about him felt like home. And his voice was deep, almost teasing. And she was right, I was poor. I don't even match your standards. Jungkook exhaled, his fingers straining up to cup her cheeks. Listen to me, and listen well. I love your wine. Her breath caught. I accepted you exactly as you are. I love you, my love. She's just my cousin, not more than that. You're not my mistress. You are my wife, and I don't give a damn about standards. Her heart pounded so loud she thought she could hear it. Jungkook smirked slightly, brushing his fingers through her hair. I was planning to propose to you on graduation day, but that Amashi ruined my surprise. A small smile crept onto Wyan's lips, but then she suddenly pulled back, looking at him with wide eyes. But she said she will propose to you tomorrow. What if you choose her? Jungkook chuckled lowly before leaning in, his lips brushing against her cheek. Trust me, baby. He kissed away her tears, his lips lingering longer than necessary. There is only one woman I would ever choose, and she's already in my arms. Wine's fingers clutched his shirt, her head resting against his chest. And for the first time since their marriage, she truly believed it. Jungkook wasn't just her husband, he was hers, and she was his. The hallway was eerily empty, the silence almost deafening. The only people present were Emma, Jungkook, and Wine, who stood a few feet away watching the scene unfold. Jungkook opened his locker only to be greeted by a bouquet of red roses. His jaw clenched, he let out a scoff, pulling them out and tossing them aside like trash. Emma gasped dramatically. Jungkook, I bought those for you. How could you just throw them away? Jungkook didn't even spare her a glance. Instead, his dark eyes immediately searched for Wine. His features softening the second they met hers. Come here. Wine hesitated, glancing at Emma's furious expression, but eventually she walked over. The moment she was within reach, Jungkook's arm wrapped around her waist possessively, pulling her against his side. Emma's eyes widened before her face twisted in disgust. Oh, please, don't tell me you're still entertaining this joke of our relationship. Watch your mouth, Emma. His voice was deadly, sharp as a knife. Emma rolled her eyes, folding her arms. Jungkook, you deserve better. Why waste yourself on some pathetic little charity case? Wine felt a sting in her chest, but before she could react, Jungkook's grip on her waist tightened. Charity case, he chuckled darkly. Funny how you think I need your validation. Wine is my wife, whether you like it or not. Emma scoffed, stepping closer, her eyes burning with jealousy. Wife, please, you think she's someone special? Look at her, Jungkook. She has nothing to offer you. No wealth, no status, no class, just a pathetic girl trying to hold on to someone out of her league. Wine clenched her fists, but before she could speak, Jungkook's grip left her waist and instead wrapped around her waist, pulling her even closer. And yet she's the one in my arms, not you. You're making a mistake. Jungkook smirked, his voice dropping lower. The only mistake here is you assuming you haven't had a chance. She can't even compare to me, Jungkook. I can give you everything, luxury, status. The only thing I want is already beside me. He turned to Wine, his gaze holding nothing but warmth. I don't need wealth or power when I have the only person who sees me for who I really am. She's weak, Jungkook, a weak, poor little girl. And deep down, you know she will never be enough for you. Wine's breath hitched, old insecurities creeping into her mind. Jungkook's entire body tensed. His eyes darkened to something terrifying as he turned his full attention to Emma. Say one more word about her and I swear you will regret it. Oh, please, what can you do? Jungkook took a slow step forward, his voice dropping dangerously low. You think I don't know your little tricks? The way you try to belittle her just because she has something you will never have. She has my heart, my loyalty, my protection. Protection from what? Jungkook's gaze turned ice cold. From people like you. Wine watched in stunned silence as Emma took a step back, the confidence draining from her face. If you value your little life, keep her name out of your filthy mouth. The weight of his words sent a chill down Wine's spine. Emma swallowed, but she still tried to regain control. One day, Jungkook, you will realize what a waste she is. And one day you will realize I never gave a damn about you. Emma's face burned red in humiliation. With one last glare, she stormed away, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Silence settled in the empty hallway. Jungkook sighed and turned to Wine. You okay? Wine hesitated before nodding, then his fingers gently tilted her chin up, his gaze dark and unreadable. Can I kiss you? Wine's breath hissed. No, not you. Jungkook's lips curled into a smirk. He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. Your lips say no. His fingers traced her jaw, sending shivers down her spine, but your eyes begged me to leave you.